Hello, my name is Benjamin Nutten, Solutions Architect at Perspectium, and today we are going to talk about how our replicator product can enable you to sync data bidirectionally between ServiceNow and JIRA. This also includes work notes and attachments. Our use case today is an incident being created on a service desk, and then that incident being categorized as something that requires dev attention. That categorization will automatically cause a defect to be created in JIRA, and subsequent updates on either side will automatically be replicated, therefore eliminating any swivel chair. So your service desk remains in ServiceNow and your developers remain in JIRA, and yet they can communicate seamlessly. So first, we are going to create a basic incident as it would come in through the catalog. I am logged in as an ITIL user, and I'm going through the service catalog to log in a defect or something being broken. Once I submit the incident, I will also attach a screenshot of the error. Now this incident is in a queue, so the service desk will notice it and will start working on it. So let's see what their view is like. When they refresh their view, they will see a new incident being created. This one, my website, is no longer working. And in this case, they will say this is a software issue, and they will categorize it as such. The Perspectium application was set up to automatically share incidents where the category is software out to JIRA. So let's see what happens on the JIRA side. Once I refresh my view, I see a new issue being created, and it has the data coming in from the ServiceNow side. You'll notice it has the fields that are mapped correctly, so the description, the short description, and we also see the attachment here. And now let's go through the process that our developers would go through in working this issue. They would probably assign it to themselves, and they would probably add a comment to send back to the service desk. Now those updates are being fed back through the Perspectium architecture to ServiceNow. So on the ServiceNow side, the service desk, as they monitor this issue, this incident, they will be able to see exactly what's happening on the other side. So first you will see that the external reference is being filled out now. So we know which is the ticket number on the JIRA side, which is very helpful in case they have to call someone about this. And you also see the comments coming in from the JIRA side. You'll notice the user making this update is just called a JIRA user. We could further map this via the email of the user in JIRA and the email of the user in ServiceNow to make sure we sync those users correctly. But if that check fails, we can also have just a generic user that we impersonate to make those updates so it makes sense to the users. And then we can add a work note on this side as well. Thank you much. And this work note will again be fed all the way back into the JIRA side. As you can see, the sync is near real time. It takes a few seconds for the data to go all the way from one system to the other. This is cloud to cloud, and it is going through our infrastructure, but it is near real time. Now let's pretend that we are marking this as done on this side. And we'll also add a few more pieces of information so that the service desk knows what to do. We'll add an attachment, and we'll add another work note to say, we are done with this defect. Again, all of this data is now being fed from the JIRA side into the Perspectium architecture and back to ServiceNow. When we reload the form, we can see the attachment coming in from JIRA, and again, the comments coming in from JIRA. You'll notice also here that we've mapped the states in accordance to how we want the processes to be mapped. So on the JIRA side, we are closing this defect. It is now marked as done. However, on the ServiceNow side, we don't necessarily want the incident to be marked as completed or close complete. In this case, we've just mapped it to awaiting evidence. And this is something that you as the user, as the administrator, have the ability to change. So now let's look at how Perspectium is actually sharing this record out. Here's a high-level view of the Perspectium architecture. At its core is this idea of a message broker service. When records get created or updated in ServiceNow, and we have previously decided to share those out to a subscriber, our native ServiceNow application pushes those records to the message broker service. Then, when the subscriber is ready to consume that data, they will just download it from the message broker service and process it. Today, our subscriber is JIRA. So let's look at the Perspectium application in ServiceNow. As you can see, it just shows up on the left-hand side navigation. The Perspectium application is native and it's installed via an update set. So your ServiceNow administrators will be able to administer it without having to learn a new tool. Now let's look a little more closely at our sharing settings. Here we've set up a dynamic share, which allows us to share records as they are created. And let's look at the dynamic share that we've set up for JIRA. We can see here that the dynamic share will share all incidents where the category is software, and will also share them as they are created, updated, or deleted. We can also specify where these records are going to go to in the message broker service. In this case, we are targeting the JIRA queue. Generally, there is one queue per subscriber of data, so we can specify who gets the data that we are sharing at that point. So instead of doing a point-to-point web service integration where we give out an endpoint and let users or subscribers get the data that they need, we decide at the source what data we want to share in the first place. When we categorize the incident as being software related, the ServiceNow Perspectium application shared that record to a queue in the message broker service. The subscriber of that queue in this particular case is a handler that we maintain in the message broker service infrastructure. The handler subscribed to the message, downloaded it, and then translated it into a format that JIRA would understand, and then finally made a call to the API on the JIRA side. Conversely, when JIRA has updates or inserts on its side, a webhook call is made to the handler in the message broker service, and that handler will then retranslate the data into a queue message. The Perspectium application on the ServiceNow side then subscribes to that queue and gets the data in. If we want to look into a little more detail as to how the data mapping is done, we can look at this diagram. You can see here that the data coming out of ServiceNow is being translated via a table map. A table map is a Perspectium component that lives within ServiceNow, and that's very similar to a transform map. It basically maps each field on the ServiceNow incident side to a common data model that we have in the message broker service. And so what we share is what we call a common incident in this case, which is very similar to the task record in ServiceNow, just with a few more fields. Then the handler subscribes to this message, and the handler is programmed so that it knows how to translate the fields from the common incident format into the fields on a JIRA issue. Then it packages that call again on the API side, on the JIRA side, and makes the API call. Conversely, when JIRA sends data into the handler, it sends an issue. That issue is translated by the handler as a common incident in the queue. The Perspectium application subscribes to that common incident, puts the data into an import set, and then transforms it into your incident. This allows you to have tremendous amount of control over how you translate the data. In our example, a state of done on the JIRA side translated to awaiting evidence on the ServiceNow side. We can control that by just changing the transform map on this side, on the ServiceNow side, to say as the state comes into the system, we can translate it from the values that exist in JIRA to the values that we want in ServiceNow. Now, this example leverages two cloud services. ServiceNow is in cloud and JIRA is also in the cloud. We can also support more complex deployment options where, for example, your JIRA would be on-prem. In that case, the infrastructure is very similar to what we have for a regular cloud-to-cloud integration, but we have a repeater that basically allows us to repeat the calls from the handler to the on-prem JIRA, the API calls from the handler to the on-prem JIRA. JIRA still calls out through your firewalls or a handler, and then everything flows back through the master broker service into ServiceNow.
Deploying the solution is rather quick. The first part involves installing the ServiceNow Perspectium application via an update set. Then we set you up in our master broker service infrastructure in Amazon Web Services. And finally, we work with you to map your JIRA fields, including custom ones, to your ServiceNow fields.
I hope this was helpful. If you have any further questions about our JIRA integration capabilities, please reach out to us via our website.